Via Nunzio Nasi is located in the territorial district of the parish of San Lorenzo Martir, and is a street full of history. Without any documented certainty, it seems presumable that in 1671, it was known as Via San Giacomo della Cortina. Mario Sereno wrote this, referring to a route of the statuary groups of the Misteri of that year. It then took the name San Lorenzo della Cortina. With the passage of time, it became Via della Cortina. Likewise, there is no conclusive evidence on the term Cortina. However, Francesca Garziano writes of the existence of the Porta Cortina, so called because it opened in a part of the city walls protected by a curtain. It allowed access to the street of the same name after crossing it. Even before the early 1900s, it was ballottata, paved with local hard stone. In fact, in the Rivista Generale del Ferrovi e dei Lavori Pubblici of the 9th of March 1902, there is an indication of the reconstruction of its paving. Around 1930 it was paved and the two pavements were built. In 1950 it was named after the Trapani politician, Nunzio Nasi. Over time, it has emptied of its residents. However, some dwellings remain dating back to the mid-1700s, with very steep access stairs where one can still perceive an atmosphere full of smells and scents that leave room for the imagination as to how life was in those days. Many buildings are examples of traditional Sicilian architecture, with wrought iron balconies and decorated facades. Some, dating back to the 19th century, have been restored to preserve historical value. Many of the activities of yesteryear no longer exist, but the charm of the place remains through the historic buildings and the few businesses that still survive. Unfortunately, today this street is one like so many others, almost unknown. It was once full of life and sociability, an important landmark for the local community, with numerous craftsmen's workshops and shops that served the residents. It was a meeting place for the inhabitants of the neighborhood, where they mainly produced products related to coral working, ceramics, and wrought iron. These trades were fundamental to the local economy and represented the skill and creativity of Trapani's craftsmen. To protect what little is left, we cling to the memories and scents that can be perceived as we set off on a journey back in time. The street, starting from the east, along its progress, intersects several side streets, rich in city history. Via Dottore Antonino Torretta, 1847 to 1922. A doctor at the Sant'Antonio Abate Hospital in Trapani, he increased his reputation in the medical world over time thanks to the importance of the studies he conducted on surgical activity. Via Dottore Carlo Guida, 1879 to 1949. A surgeon, scientist, historian, mayor from 1920 to 1923, he set up the Lega Medica Trapanese in Trapani, established a mutual insurance fund for the order of physicians and pharmacists, and created and directed the magazine Bollettino Medico. Via dei Tintori, where a small sculpture of a face can be seen in a niche, indicating that in the Middle Ages the street was the site of Jewish craft workshops, equipped for dyeing cloth. Via Giuseppe Verdi, 1813 to 1901. One of the best-known composers and operas ever, he also participated actively, but briefly, in Italian political life. Via Generale Domenico Giglio, 1855 to 1934. He took part in the Battle of Adwa in Eritrea in 1896, and in the March on Rome on the 28th of October 1922. He was commander of the 31st Infantry Regiment in Trapani. Via Generale Enrico Fardella di Toriasa, 1820 to 1892. A member of the Anti-Bourbon Revolutionary Committee, in 1848 he took part in the Crimean War and took part in the Battle of Balaclava. He was commander of a brigade in the Spedizioni dei Mille, and then mayor of the city from 1873 to 1879. It was his initiative to build the portico of the Mercato del Pesci, the Palazzo di Ali, and the Caserma Vittorio Emanuele. A little further to the right is an alley that refers to a small hamlet in the Trapani area, Citta. Via Soriso, where in the 15th century, a wealthy merchant, a certain Felice Sarisso, who had a young Turkish slave at home, seems to have lived. The latter, having fallen in love with his beautiful wife, corresponded and fled with her from Trapani. Embarking on a pirate ship, they enslaved Felice Sarisso who, meditating revenge, killed them. He cut off his wife's head and took it to Trapani to display it next to his house, at the beginning of the street, as a testimony to what had happened. Specific genealogical research led Rosario Salone to assume that the rich merchant belonged to the Riccio, or Sieri family, and that he bore the name Isho, hence Sir Isho. This is in consideration of the fact that from 1528 onwards, in all the old baptism, marriage and death registers, no Felice Sarisso appears, and that he probably gave himself the name Felice, because before his wife's betrayal, being married to a beautiful woman, rich and good-natured, respected by all, he had been able to write, Un tempu ju felici mi chiamava. Since we do not know his exact name, or which family he belonged to, it is safe to assume that the person who handed down this story gave him Sir as an abbreviation of Messer, used by the priests of the time in their transcriptions of religious acts. The name Isho can be found in Trapani as early as the 15th century, for instance in several transcriptions of marriages between members of the wealthy Riccio family and members of the equally wealthy Sieri family, and subsequent baptisms. Also on Via Sarisso is the marble plaque on the building where double bass player Antonino Maria Scontrino, 1850 to 1922, was born. He studied composition in Palermo. He taught at the Real Istituto Musicale in Florence, gifted for instrumental and symphonic chamber music. He also wrote operas, romances and stage music. The city's music conservatory is named after him. At the junction with Via Custonaci and Via Giacomo Tartaglia, the initial part of the street that was originally, according to this map of the Rhine Palazzo, called Via Lamia, shows, like most of the narrow streets in the historic center, some courtyards, two of which, the Cortile Settimo and the Cortile Bellina, have retained their original conformation. Others, such as the Cortile Fiorito and the Cortile San Daniele, have been closed off with gates. At the end of the 14th century, with James II of Aragon, the Quartiere Palazzo was created and the Rua Grande was traced. The rocks and islets that formed part of Trapani's original urban agglomeration, where foreign consulates and religious structures had long stood, were reclaimed. In the district, there were mainly common Terrane houses, typical of the Trapani settlement. This is confirmed by a donation made to the convent of the Carmelites by Sister Francesca de Cattonia on the 24th of September 1371, in particular of Domus Solerate, so to speak Iusu e Susu below and above, and of a terraced house with an additional room in Contrata Cortine. This also reveals an aspect of historical interest that attests to the existence of pious communities, and the pivotal role played by the Carmelite convent of Santa Maria Annunziata. During the 15th century, the new urbanization of the city took place through predominantly square, or rectangular lots, and the Via degli Corollari e degli Cordari, both today corresponding to Via Torriasa, formed the point of separation between the old urban fabric and the expansion areas. The Quartiere Palazzo or San Lorenzo expanded through the Rhine San Francesco and Rhine San Lorenzo, taking its name due to the abundant presence of stately homes and elegant palaces, tenements and houses built on several levels. Many areas of the district that were still empty were later filled in. The Sieri family continued to live in Via Cuba, but the Fardella, Perino, Setasoldi, and Riccio families already inhabited Via San Francesco and Via della Cortina. Giovan Francesco Pugnator confirms another work that had been carried out in 1595. The small church with the convent of San Benedetto was founded on this street for the hospitality reserved for the various religious people passing through the city. By 1748, the feudal administration of the Fardella family owned the Cortina Palace. On the 20th of September 1944, Nino Castiglione, an esteemed entrepreneur linked to the world of fishing and tuna processing, lived on this street. Let us try to give an idea of what daily life was like for residents in the past. The street was bustling with numerous craftsmen's workshops and shops. Residents often shopped in small grocery shops, bakeries and local butcher shops. Craft shops, such as shoemakers and tailors' shops, were landmarks for the community. The taverns, fry shops, sweet shops and social activities gave the street great animosity and liveliness. In the strict dialect of Trapani, it was called Via Cortina. During the period when Nunzio Nasi was a prominent political figure, the street hosted several visits from politicians and dignitaries, accompanied by public celebrations and speeches. It was also the scene of demonstrations and protests, especially during periods of political and social change, reflecting the tensions and aspirations of the local community. Social life was very active and people, given the proximity to the Rua Grande, easily met in the streets or cafes to chat and discuss the events of the day. Traditions were very important. Religious processions, patronal festivals and fairs were moments of great participation. The street was the focal point for Settimana Santa celebrations, attracting large crowds and including moments of intense community participation. In this regard, Peppino Tartaro recalls that Mr. Francesco Paolo Romano used to prepare a small altar richly decorated with red festoons for the Corpus Domini procession, near his business, Casa del Vino, at the corner of Via Cortina and Via Tintori. Patronal festivities saw the street decorated with lights and flags, providing a festive atmosphere. Some of the residents worked in the nearby salt pans, shipyards or in seafaring and commercial activities, others were fishermen or worked in the surrounding fields. Working life was hard, but there was a strong sense of community and solidarity among the residents. Education was considered important. Children attended local schools. Families were often large. Children played in the streets, creating lasting bonds with their peers. Cooking was a central aspect of daily life. On feast days, families prepared traditional dishes such as pasta con lasad, couscous di pesci, and typical sweets such as cannoli and cassata. Recipes were handed down from generation to generation. The street follows the street numbering, starting at the junction with the Via Torretta. Here the side of the magnificent 15th century Palazzo Riccio di San Giovacchino stands out. The main facade on Via Torretta dates to the 16th century. It has a Catalan-style entrance portal characterized by a large stone arch over which an imposing Baroque balcony can be admired. The more sober side is on Rua Grande, opposite the Chiesa del Collegio dei Gesuiti. The palace, clearly Baroque in style, built by the barons San Giovacchino and Arcadesi, is structured on 4 elevations. Its current appearance derives from a reconstruction that took place in the 18th century. The structure features a facade distinguished on the main floor by richly decorated balconies, a symbol of the prosperity of the nobility at the time. Fanciful window and balcony displays in which the corbels bear a grotesque human face motif. Entering leads to a beautiful courtyard with a 3-arched gallery. The convent and church of San Rocco has a history full of transformations. It was built in 1574 by the Descalced Franciscans of the Third Order on the site of the customs warehouse. In 1770, architect Don Paolo Rizzo rebuilt it, giving it a new life. Inside, artistic works attributed by Friar Benigno di Santa Caterina to Domenico La Bruna, Guglielmo Bormans, and Rosario Matera were kept. After the suppression of religious orders in 1866, the building housed various offices, including the post office and the Institute of Hygiene and Prophylaxis. Today it is home to the Museo di Arte Contemporanea. The Church of the Santissimo Sacramento, located at the corner of Via Generale Domenico Giglio, dates back to 1698, and was enlarged in 1717 through the munificence of the ladies Anna Cusenza and Caterina Cusenza Dadone, who donated some houses Pilar by Sogna, with a deed dated the 18th of September from the notary Montalto. It was entrusted to the Pia Opera del Quaranta or Circolari, established in the Church of San Nicola. The Quaranta or refer to the time that elapsed, according to the scriptures, between Christ's deposition in the tomb and his resurrection. They are referred to as circular because, to commemorate the event, the Blessed Sacrament was displayed in turn in the city's main churches. The structure, named Sala Laurentina, is now at the disposal of the diocese for the organization of conferences and cultural activities. In the midst of the Aragonese period, the 14th century small church of San Leonardo Lo Grande was built in the Contrada della Cortina. Legend has it that it was built by a Spanish captain who, chased by corsairs, vowed to San Leonardo, protector of prisoners, to build a church under his name in the place where he would arrive safe. In the 17th century, the notary Giovanni Vito Vitoli, in a deed dated the 6th of November 1610, attested that, by order of the Bishop of Mazzara, the church of San Leonardo Lo Grande is entrusted to the care of the master masons with the obligation of restoring and embellishing it and with permission to celebrate the Santi Quattro Incoronati, patron saints of the art. Thus the Maestri Murafabri took possession of the structure, naming it after the Quattro Santi Incoronati Severus, Severinus, Carpophorus and Victorinus. In his writings, Father Benino di Santa Caterina tells us that its antiquity is in the exterior of the door, since the year of its foundation, 1600, should be noted in the architrave. There is a beautiful painting of the Holy Martyrs in said church. The Mistranza dei Muratori takes care of this church, and every year on the 8th of November they celebrate its feast day. By deed of the 8th of August 1763, drawn up at the office of Notary Onofrio Venza, Don Francesco Testagrossa, Baron of San Giovanni, Captain of Justice and Prefect, donated to the Art dei Murafabri the ground floor of his palace corresponding to the back of the church altar, in order to be able to build the sacristy. Subsequently, by deed of the 1st of June 1767, the easements between the church and the baron's property were defined, and it was decided to open a door in the sacristy corresponding to the courtyard of the palace in order to give Testagrossa direct access to the church. The war events of 1943 led to the ruin of the church, which was rebuilt by the Mistranza dei Muratori e Scalpolini in 1947. Minimal traces remain of the church today. Elected as the headquarters of the Mistranza itself, today it is the meeting point of the category and the venue for meetings of the group's consuls and collaborators, as can be seen from the plaque at the access point to the premises. Among the palaces of the Rua Grande, today's Corso Vittorio Emanuele, the elegant and sober mansion that was built in 1775 by Alessandro Ferro, a descendant of one of the most illustrious families of the Kingdom of Sicily, stands out. The present structure is the result of several alterations. The first in the 1750s transformed an old estate of houses belonging to the Knight Fia Alessio di Ferro 1700 to 1780 into a palace, another, at the end of the 18th century, with a new facade on the Rua Grande. The work was supervised by master builder Felice Pisano, who was very active in Trapani in those years. In 1930, after several uses of the building, it changed owners who entrusted its renovation to the Palermitan engineer Salvatore Corona Roberti. The palace is the expression of a cultured and composed nobility. It significantly proposes the presence of Rococo taste in the city. It has a smooth wall curtain, lightened by the undulating design of 4 balconies, in whose tympanums there are medallions depicting busts of illustrious members of the family. In the center of the main facade, on Corso Vittorio Emanuele, is a cartouche decorating the clock and bearing the year of construction and the motto, Promi et Patria, 15 January 1775. Palazzo Alessandro Ferro has a double entrance to a central courtyard with a median staircase and a terrace with a hanging garden. The main one, surmounted by a large balcony, insists on the Rua Grande and is curiously off-cent with respect to the building. This confirms that originally the palace developed symmetrically on both sides. Then a fire destroyed the east wing, which is said to have been surmounted by a beautiful hanging garden. The other entrance is on Via della Cortina. The facade there is characterized by wide flat ashlars interspersed with a spiral motif dating back to ancient Greece. Turillo di San Malato, 1838–1910, a great swordsman, established a fencing school in Trapani that soon became famous and frequented by the scions of the city's nobility and upper middle class. The Hall of Arms was initially located in a flat in Piazza del Tetro, now Piazza Scarlatti, then moved to Via San Francesco di Assisi and later to Via della Cortina. In it he instructed his son Athos, 1868–1934, in the noble art. The gastronomic aspect of the street presented historical activities, including numerous bakeries where many Trapanians, starting after the war, experienced the daily life of Via della Cortina. Today, few citizens remember those activities. This is why we try to revive their memory with the little information we have available today. Boasting 3 generations of activity is Gaspare Rousseau's bakery, better known as Asperu l'Orview, today known as Panificio Cristofanelli. His daughter Concetta married Adriano Cristofanelli, originally from Rome, who continued the business together with his wife. Their son Gaspar today, together with his wife Mrs. Rita, continues the family tradition by supplementing the production of bread and traditional wood-fired bakery products with electric, sweet and savory oven products. The bakery of Mr. Romolo Cortassa, who was born in Naples, was one of the many historic bakeries located at the beginning of the street. It was known for the quality of its bread, for its biscuits, for the renowned Milidri Semolina bread biscuits, the best in the city, for his taralli, and for the warm welcome it offered its customers. This was also a landmark for the local community, where people stopped not only to buy bread, but also to socialize and chat. Characteristic was the tall marble sales counter that almost came out of the front door. This bakery no longer exists today. The Panificio Popolado Melchior, owned by Pietro Popolado, almost in the center of the street, like many other bakeries, has closed its doors over the years. The reasons were certainly due to changing consumer habits, competition from large supermarkets, and the difficulty of maintaining a family business over time. Nevertheless, the memory of the Panificio Popolado remains alive in the collective memory. Instead, the Forno Salone Giuseppe, dating from the 1850s, may have fallen into oblivion. This is the deed of promise to celebrate the marriage between the same owner, residing in Via Cortina, a baker by profession, son of Girolamo, a miller by profession, and Miss Antonia Dragna, residing in the Sant'Anna boundary wall, daughter of Giuseppe, also a miller. The newlyweds would probably have lived in the house of the Salone family, catalogued as a Casa e Puccio dwelling. A search in an old regional directory reveals other bakers' activities: Orgagliaro Costantina, widowed Pizzardi; Alisai Maria, widowed Buscano; Bruno Antonio, son of Vincenzo; Morone Maria, daughter of Leonardo; Solina Carmelo, son of Raphael; Mercata Simone, son of Giovan Battista; and Signorino Paolo. Nothing remains of all this except this faint written memory. The Casa del Vino, founded in 1927, served the community for many years. It was run by Mr. Francesco Paolo Romano, a distinguished gentleman, always dressed in a suit and tie, best known for his sandwiches with provola cheese and anchovies, or with salami, capers and anchovies, as well as the hard-boiled eggs available daily, all accompanied by a glass of good wine, or passito pantesco. Francesco Paolo, after having worked as an usher at the Costantino e Cadoro e Campani wine export company, headquartered in the nearby Piazza Lucatelli, became an adult, and, with the help of the commendator Mario Costantino, opened a fiascateria selling the wines of the company where he had worked. Back then, these shops were called fiascateria, because they sold wines of any quality in 1 or 2 liter glass flasks, with straw wrapping, and also bulk wines with a numbered glass measure. The fiascateria also housed large barrels that contained Marsala wine and other qualities. The barrels had traditional wooden taps, called I Canada in dialect. The Pasticceria Gelateria dei Fratelli Maggio, was known for its homemade ice creams, prepared with fresh, high-quality ingredients. It was a reference point for the people of Trapani, who went there to enjoy the delicious ice creams and granitas, especially during the hot summer days. The old-fashioned sweets were also appreciated: pesh, graf, cannoli, Sicilian cassata, and tunicini. Thanks to the Arabs, Sicily learned to make fried panelle, made with chickpea flour. Panella, which began as a poor food, is now also found in restaurants, served as an appetizer. The hot panelle sandwich is a street food classic. On one corner of the street was a bakery run by a Palermo couple, Yuzu Sikshu, and a Zie Giovanna, known more commonly as the Polimitana. The woman was in charge of packaging and selling the sandwiches, sitting on a tall stool. For each sandwich she would ask, "Soli e ppci uvoli," waiting for the customer's answer. She had already put it on. At any time of the day, a nice sandwich with hot panelle and potato crocchi would dull the hunger pangs for students before or after classes, and for adults who then went to the Casa del Vino. The Pizzeria Michele Calvino is a historic gastronomic institution in Trapani. It was founded in Via Cortina, immediately after the Second World War in 1946. Michele Calvino opened the pizzeria with many sacrifices, but he managed to create a place loved by the community. It is one of the few businesses still surviving. For us Trapanians and others, his pizzas are certainly a candidate for World Heritage status, and there is not a Trapanian who has not boasted of the historic pizza, a Rianata, of other types of pizza, such as a Napoli, or a Margherita, but also I bummy arancine with meat sauce, I timballetti, a lasagna o fernu, upalu o fernu, and I patati vastasai. A curious rumor has persisted for years that the place, due to the small size of the rooms where the pizzas are eaten, had been a pleasure house. None of this is true. A yearbook also turns up the Ristorant Italia, whose premises might today coincide with the Trattoria da Salvatore. Just as the existence of cake workshop of Salvatore Canolo, famous for its graf con la ricotta, probably comes from a prankster who keeps making fun of people. But who knows, maybe it was just that. And still other shops recorded in the same yearbook: Valenti Giacomino shoemaker, Morone confectioner's shop, Strasra Puscia, Bevilacqua butcher's shop, Saluto butcher's shop corner of Via Soriso, Costantino Spartaco electrical equipment shop. The list of other activities of various kinds is verbose, but it is always appropriate, and above all may represent a point of pride for the descendants, to report a minimum of detail. The Annuario dell'Industria e Commercio Guida Generale d'Italia of November 1946 shows the presence of these companies: Istituto Nazionale dell'Assicurazione Infortuni sul Lavoro, Garruccio Giuseppe Ibali Paints and Varnishes, Bica Pietro Electrical Equipment Shop. Other presences: a warehouse of the Ditta Castiglio Nino and, since 1800, a pleasure house. Finally, Giacomino Martinez, who lived in Via della Cortina, at number 129, reports the existence of the headquarters of the Partito Monarchico. The Annuario di Sicilia La Trinacria, 1905 to 1906, mentions activities that are all registered under the place name Via della Cortina: Vivona Luigi, son of Arcangelo lawyer, Messina Vincenzo, son of Baldassare lawyer solicitor, Tumbarello Michel pharmacist, Rizzo Alberto hotel posta, Stable Antonia cafe, Cerco Sorel shoe shop, Bergarella Fortunata widowed, Ziccici coal shop, Rosano Francesco Cooper, Previti Giuseppe E.C. coal shop. Costantino Mario, son of Michele commissary and representative, Giamarinaro Pietro, son of Giuseppe, resale leather, Uxello Filippa, widowed Salvo grocery shop, Campaniolo Antonino, son of Gasper, iron shop, Di Vita Vincenzo, son of Gasper groceries, Costantino Cavalli Mario timber, Gambina Paola Dottore Vito timber, Fontana Antonina, widowed Giosu, haberdashery, Sansica Maria Corso haberdashery, Campaniolo Giovanni, son of Antonio tinsmith, Caracorza Leonardo, son of Filippo tinsmith, Mucchiari Alberto tobacconist, Orsi Giuseppe, son of Domenico cloth shop, Cartavito, son of Giuseppe cloth shop, Costantino and Cadoro e.c. wine. Nunzio Nasi was born in Trapani in the Quartiere Palazzo, more precisely as reported by the lawyer Mario Sereno, in Via Tintoreri, today Via Tintori, on the 2nd of April 1850 from Anna Virgilio and Rosario, Aromatario. He attended high school in Trapani and university in Palermo. He graduated in law in 1873 and qualified as a teacher in Rome. Requested by his widowed mother, he returned to Trapani where he taught. He then devoted himself to law, then to local politics. He reached the Chamber of Deputies in 1886, while he continued to take an interest in the affairs of his city, promoting the increase in the water supply in 1890. He held the position of Minister of Posts in the Pellex cabinet. A pupil of Prime Minister Zanadelli, he was Minister of Public Education, and was held in such high esteem by the Prime Minister that it was rumored that he would soon become Prime Minister and National Grand Master of Massoneria Italiana, positions that would have annoyed opponents who disagreed with his markedly southern-oriented ideas. In 1904, a tormented period began for him. He was accused of irregularly disbursing funds in the budget, of incurring travel expenses, of sending books and printed matter without declaring their use or destination, of disbursing funds for the purchase of books for personal use, of stealing even a plaid, and he forfeited his office as a Member of Parliament. The accusations were so ridiculous that in reality, there was a very precise design behind them: the moral destruction of the Member of Parliament from Trapani. The trial against Nasi caused a wave of indignation in Sicily. In Trapani, a protest bordering on revolution broke out. A postal carriage with the insignia of the House of Savoy was thrown into the sea. All the shops displayed Nunzio Nasi's portrait, flags were lowered and spontaneous processions through the main streets were organized. He was sentenced on the 24th of February, 1908. When his sentence expired, on the 29th of August 1912, he stood again as a candidate for the Chamber of Deputies in the 1913 elections in the constituencies of Trapani, Caltanissetta, Modica and Palermo, where he was plebiscitally elected. What Nasi demanded was to give the South a more dignified place in the economic and social history of the nation. The outbreak of the First World War, and then the end of the conflict, led to the shattering of the illusion of industrial development in the South. The loss of some traditional markets for the Trapani economy due to the post-war economic crisis, and the shift towards agrarian interests of some families led to the crumbling of Nasiano's positions. After his last parliamentary speech on the 12th of July, 1924, he abandoned politics. He remained living in Rome. In the summer of 1935, he returned to Sicily, staying with friends on the summit of Eris. There he died on the night of the 17th of September, 1935. In recent decades, the street has undergone some significant transformations, although some restoration projects have preserved its historical architecture. Some buildings have been converted into modern structures, but efforts have been made to preserve the essence. Today, it is a mix of tradition and modernity, with new shops and restaurants joining the old workshops. Recently, after a closure of vehicular transit that lasted a good 8 years due to a scaffolding and pedestrian tunnel built to secure a building that was in danger of collapsing, after numerous protests and a collection of signatures, after the penalties of years including the non-passage of the Sacri Gruppi dei Misteri, the removal took place. Every day, starting in the late afternoon and throughout the evening, the street is traversed by the pungent smell of fried food of all kinds together with the heady perfume of couscous, a synthesis of Arab culture, and the great gastronomic experience of the Trapanese, who have succeeded in transforming a semolina-based dish into a tasty and refined dish. Ncucciato na mafferada, enriched with spices, is steamed na pignata couscous, and put to rest under a woolen blanket, after being abiverato with a rich fish broth, prepared separately. There is also a cultural value to be noted: the presence of the Auditorium Sala Laurentina, the former Santissimo Sacramento Church, and the Museo di Arte Contemporanea San Rocco. The latter presents a variety of works by local, national and international artists. Exhibitions offer an overview of modern trends in art and include painting, music, sculpture, photography, and multimedia installations. The museum also organizes cultural events, workshops and lectures, making it a point of reference for art enthusiasts and the local community. It is an ideal place to discover new forms of artistic expression and to immerse oneself in contemporary culture. Until 2021, the street housed the headquarters of the Union Maestrans at number 59. Today, this organization brings together 22 associations among what used to be called Setai, Mestieri, category and is responsible for the organization of Settimana Santa in Trapani. The presentation of this street was a favorable opportunity to brush up on a page of Trapani's history. Via Nunzio Nasi, a historical, sensorial and cultural route to be taken, to be experienced, to be loved.